It started with silence, the kind that feels too heavy for mourning. I stepped outside, coffee in hand, still half in yesterday's thoughts. Then I heard it, the grinding roar of chainsaws. At first, I thought someone was clearing storm debris. But when I turned the corner of my porch and looked across the yard, my stomach dropped. They were cutting my tree. The old oak stood tall for 86 years, planted by my father, a war hero. He'd carved his initials into its bark before shipping off. We used to sit under it every summer, just the two of us with stories he never told anyone else. It wasn't just a tree. It was him. I ran, shirtless, barefoot, nearly slipped on the dewy grass. I yelled to stop. My voice cracked as I screamed over the chainsaws. But they didn't care. Two contractors in neon vests kept slicing into the trunk like they were butchers, not men. Behind them, HOA President Karen stood with her arms folded. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, just stared at me like I was the problem. I shouted that the tree was registered, that it was protected. Her smirk widened. "You were warned," she said coldly. 3 citations. You ignored them. So we acted. I froze. They were halfway through the trunk. I stepped forward. One of the workers blocked me. "Sir, you can't be here." "Step back. It's HOA property now." HOA property? That tree stood before this neighborhood had gates, before any bylaws existed, before Karen moved in last year and decided she owned every inch of grass within her sight. I begged. I pleaded. I told him to stop, that there were records, federal paperwork, military significance. But it was too late. The trunk groaned, splintered, and then snapped. The oak collapsed in slow motion. Dust and leaves flew up like smoke. The sound of it hitting the earth broke something in me. I dropped to my knees. Karen walked up to me, heels tapping the sidewalk like a gavel. "Next time, read the rules." She turned and walked away. I couldn't breathe. I crawled to the stump, hands shaking, dirt under my nails. And then I saw it. Something buried in the roots, metallic, circular. A capsule. My father's seal was etched into the top. I remembered it from when I was a boy. He buried something under the tree. Said it would only matter if things went wrong. I opened it. Inside was a folded letter, a dog tag, and a USB drive labeled, "For redemption only." My pulse spiked. The dog tag was my father's. The letter was addressed to me, but the ink was faded. I slipped the USB into my pocket. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. "Mr. Wallace," said a calm voice. "This is Agent Sloan. We need to talk. Your tree was part of a national security program. Its destruction has triggered an alert. Do not speak to anyone else. We're on our way." I stared at the stump. Karen had no idea what she'd just done, and neither did I. They arrived before noon. 2 black SUVs, tinted windows, no plates. Not a single word exchanged as the agent stepped out, suits pressed, eyes scanning everything. The air changed. Neighbors peeked through blinds. Karen watched from her porch, arms crossed, still smug. She had no clue they weren't here for me. Not really. Agent Sloan was the first to speak. Calm, efficient. His badge flickered under sunlight for just a second before vanishing into his coat again. "We need the USB." I handed it over. He didn't ask questions. He already knew what it was. They'd been watching it for years, monitoring pings from the tree's location. But now, with it gone, everything was exposed. That tree wasn't just a symbol. It was a signal post. Buried in its roots was a passive tracking node, designed decades ago, hidden beneath specific veteran-planted trees across the country. Nodes that monitored microseismic activity and underground fault lines near decommissioned missile silos. Karen hadn't cut down a tree. She'd severed a classified node from a decades-old defense program. Sloan led me to the living room. My father's medal still hung above the mantel. The weight of the past was heavy in air. "Your father didn't just serve," he said. "He helped design the protocol. Planted signal trees across 5 states. Yours was one of the final ones left active." I didn't know how to respond. I'd always thought the tree was sentimental. Now it was part of something far bigger. Something dangerous. Sloan continued. When the node went offline, it triggered a level 3 security breach. Not because of what it revealed, but because of who would notice. Foreign satellites. Rogue data interceptors. The second the tree fell, a gap opened in our coverage grid. Someone's already trying to exploit it. I couldn't process it all. My father had died believing this tree would outlast him. Now it was gone, and the whole system was vulnerable. We need to know who authorized the removal, Sloan said. We'll need our records, communications, anything signed off. I told him about Karen, about the citations, about the board meetings I was never invited to. They nodded like they'd heard it before, too many times. We've been tracking multiple HOA boards suspected of laundering land permits and targeting veteran-owned property, Sloan said. You may have just exposed another cell. Cell? He didn't elaborate. Just handed me a burner phone and told me to stay reachable. Then they were gone. That evening, I walked back to the stump. I needed air, clarity, but something caught my eye just beneath the mulch. A second capsule. Smaller, rusted, almost missed it. I pried it open. Inside was a folded photo. My father, standing with 3 other men in uniform. Behind them, the same tree, newly planted. Written on the back, if it falls, trust no one on the board. My hands trembled. I rushed inside, opened my laptop, and searched the county records. Karen's name wasn't on the original HOA registration. She had no deed ownership, no proof of residency prior to 18 months ago. Her listed address before this? A property tied to another dissolved HOA group under federal investigation. This wasn't about trimming trees or neighborhood aesthetics. It was targeted, planned. She knew what she was doing, and she had no intention of stopping. The next morning, a certified letter arrived. Not from the government. From Karen. It was a formal cease and desist, accusing me of harassment, threatening legal action if I continued to spread false accusations and interfere with HOA operations. She even claimed the tree removal was done for community safety. No mention of the citations. No mention of the federal protection notice posted weeks ago. I stood at my kitchen counter, hands trembling as I read it. Not out of fear, out of fury. She wasn't backing down. She was doubling down. I took the envelope, walked outside, and set it ablaze in the grill. Then I drove straight to the county office. I wanted records, deed histories, board meeting transcripts, complaints filed under Karen's name. But the clerk paused when I mentioned her. Said most HOA documents had been digitally migrated and were under restricted administrative access. Restricted? I wasn't asking for nuclear codes, just basic public records. But as I left, I noticed someone watching me. Tan suit, dark sunglasses, leaning against a silver sedan across the street. Not federal. Not local law either. I took a turn, doubled back behind the alley, watched as he followed me. Not close. Just enough to keep me visible. By the time I returned home, he was gone. But something had changed. My garage door was cracked open. I hadn't left it like that. I approached slowly, silently. Inside, nothing looked disturbed until I opened the storage cabinet. The capsule was missing. The second one. The photo. Gone. I didn't report it. Not yet. I needed proof. So I checked my outdoor camera footage. Rewound the feed. At 3:11 a.m., a figure entered through the side gate. Hooded. Gloved. No face. But the license plate on the car parked out front? Clear as day. I ran it through a contact. Former buddy from my military days. Now works in DMV forensics. An hour later, I got the message. Vehicle registered to Denise Harrow, Karen's assistant. She wasn't just following orders. She was an accomplice. I sent the footage to Agent Sloan. Within minutes, I got a call. She's on our radar. Do not engage. We're watching everything now. Let this unfold. But I couldn't sit still. That tree, that capsule, my father's mission, it was being unraveled from the inside out. I began digging deeper. Late-night forums, veteran-run archives, declassified military conservation records. It led me to something buried in the Department of Interior's old project lists. a quiet directive called Sentinel Grove, a post-war conservation program where certain trees were marked to house dormant intelligence notes. Only 17 trees were ever verified. Mine was one of them. And more disturbing, 3 others had been destroyed in the past year, each one tied to suspicious OA rulings. Same structure, same tactics. Property seized under minor violations. Veteran owners forced out or silenced. This wasn't coincidence. It was a pattern, a coordinated effort, and Karen was part of it. I called the HOA emergency line, requested to speak at the next board meeting. I was denied, cited for ongoing conflict of interest. Conflict of interest? They'd cut down a federally registered signal tree, broke into my home, stole federal property, and now I wasn't allowed to speak? Fine. If they wouldn't give me a seat at their table, I'd bring the table down. That night, I returned to the stump one last time, poured a ring of salt around it. Not for superstition, for memory. I whispered to the soil. They think it's over, but the roots are deeper than they know. The HOA meeting was set for Friday night, but the tension started building days before. Flyers were posted around the neighborhood, approved topics only, no outside recordings, all questions to be submitted in writing. It wasn't a meeting. It was a performance. Controlled, rehearsed, and sealed. I wasn't on the list, but someone unexpected showed up on my porch the night before. Ms. Green, retired schoolteacher, longest living resident on the block. She hadn't spoken at an HOA meeting in years, not since her petition to protect the wetlands was ignored. She handed me a box, old papers, maps, photos. Her late husband had served with my father. They'd planted 2 of the original Sentinel trees together. One was mine. The other was 2 blocks away. It had vanished last spring. No announcement. No permit notice. Just gone. Karen had done it quietly, citing root disease. Now it made sense. It was never about disease. It was about data. Inside the box was a folder labeled Rose Garden Initiative Internal. Typed in the margins were federal references, blacked out signatures, even a list of neighborhood names, mine included. Some had red excess. Some were underlined. Mine had a handwritten note. Delay. Owner aware. That confirmed it. I wasn't just collateral. I was a target. Friday came fast. I arrived early, dressed like a ghost. Hat low, hoodie pulled tight. They didn't recognize me at first. But Karen did. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "You're not on the agenda," she said. I held up a printed email. Someone had anonymously forwarded the digital HOA logs. There, in black and white, was my name under public concerns. Someone had tried to include me. Karen had deleted it. When I read it aloud, the room turned quiet. Neighbors shifted in their chairs. Someone muttered, "Let him speak." She tried to shut me down, called for a vote, tried to control the room. But the silence was breaking. I stepped forward, told them about the tree, the capsule, the records, the stolen footage, the Sentinel Grove. Faces changed. People who once nodded at Karen with blind trust now looked confused, concerned. Then I played the clip. The break-in. The clear image of Denise's license plate. "You told us you were protecting us," I said. "But from what? From a tree? From a man who served? Or from what that tree protected?" Karen's voice cracked as she stood. "That footage is illegal. It's manipulated." But someone shouted back, "That's my daughter's car behind hers." That was the same night our backyard was raided. The dam broke. Questions flew. Who gave the order? Why were multiple veteran homes targeted? Why were trees removed without permits? And then someone stood up from the back row. Agent Sloan, dressed down this time, but unmistakable. He walked to the front, showed his badge. Calm, steady, unshaken. What Mr. Wallace says is true. And this HOA board is under federal review. Karen turned pale. Denise stood, bolted for the door, only to be stopped by 2 agents waiting outside. Gasps filled the room. Sloan turned to the crowd. What was planted here wasn't just a tree. It was trust. It was legacy. That's what they tried to erase. Karen sat speechless. For once, no words to spin. I looked out over the room. Neighbors who used to turn their backs now looked straight at me, not with pity, but with understanding. The tree was gone, but the roots had done their job. They'd pulled the truth to the surface, and the storm was only beginning. The HOA meeting was set for Friday night, but the tension started building days before. Flyers were posted around the neighborhood, approved topics only, no outside recordings, all questions to be submitted in writing. It wasn't a meeting. It was a performance. Controlled, rehearsed, and sealed. I wasn't on the list, but someone unexpected showed up on my porch the night before. Ms. Green, retired schoolteacher, longest living resident on the block. She hadn't spoken at an HOA meeting in years, not since her petition to protect the wetlands was ignored. She handed me a box, old papers, maps, photos. Her late husband had served with my father. They'd planted 2 of the original sentinel trees together. One was mine. The other was 2 blocks away. It had vanished last spring. No announcement. No permit notice. Just gone. Karen had done it quietly, citing root disease. Now it made sense. It was never about disease. It was about data. Inside the box was a folder labeled Rose Garden Initiative Internal. Typed in the margins were federal references, blacked out signatures, even a list of neighborhood names, mine included. Some had red excess. Some were underlined. Mine had a handwritten note. Delay. Owner aware. That confirmed it. I wasn't just collateral. I was a target. Friday came fast. I arrived early, dressed like a ghost. Hat low, hoodie pulled tight. They didn't recognize me at first, but Karen did. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "You're not on the agenda," she said. I held up a printed email. Someone had anonymously forwarded the digital HOA logs. There, in black and white, was my name under public concerns. Someone had tried to include me. Karen had deleted it. When I read it aloud, the room turned quiet. Neighbors shifted in their chairs. Someone muttered, "Let him speak." She tried to shut me down, called for a vote, tried to control the room. But the silence was breaking. I stepped forward, told them about the tree, the capsule, the records, the stolen footage, the Sentinel Grove. Faces changed. People who once nodded at Karen with blind trust now looked confused, concerned. Then I played the clip. The break-in. The clear image of Denise's license plate. "You told us you were protecting us," I said. "But from what? From a tree? From a man who served? Or from what that tree protected?" Karen's voice cracked as she stood. "That footage is illegal. It's manipulated." But someone shouted back, "That's my daughter's car behind hers. That was the same night our backyard was raided. The dam broke." Questions flew. Who gave the order? Why were multiple veteran homes targeted? Why were trees removed without permits? And then someone stood up from the back row. Agent Sloan, dressed down this time, but unmistakable. He walked to the front, showed his badge. Calm, steady, unshaken. "What Mr. Wallace says is true. And this HOA board is under federal review." Karen turned pale. Denise stood, bolted for the door, only to be stopped by 2 agents waiting outside. Gasps filled the room. Sloan turned to the crowd. What was planted here wasn't just a tree. It was trust. It was legacy. That's what they tried to erase. Karen sat speechless. For once, no words to spin. I looked out over the room. Neighbors who used to turn their backs now looked straight at me, not with pity, but with understanding. The tree was gone, but the roots had done their job. They'd pulled the truth to the surface, and the storm was only beginning. 2 weeks passed. The neighborhood hadn't looked this alive in years. Kids played in driveways again. Flags flew from homes that used to keep their windows shuttered. Even the mailman paused to chat. He said it felt like people could breathe again. But underneath that peace, something darker pulsed. Agent Sloan kept in contact. He told me not to relax just yet. There had been movement. 2 other neighborhoods in nearby states had reported similar capsule removals. One man was hospitalized after confronting his board president. Another simply vanished. The pattern wasn't broken. It had only been exposed. And when you shine light on rot, it doesn't die. It spreads faster. That night, I received a letter. No stamp, no sender. Just a folded piece of paper tucked under my door. Inside was a photo, black and white, grainy, taken from a high vantage point. My backyard. Me, kneeling beside the new sapling I'd planted. On the back was a sentence. You're replanting more than a tree. No threat. No demand. Just a statement. I didn't sleep. At sunrise, I checked every window, every lock, scanned the security feed. Nothing. But that feeling, that prickling, invisible pressure, never left my spine. Then Sloan called. They'd intercepted chatter. Someone was posing as a land assessor. Local. Legitimate papers. But the name didn't match any employee database. He'd been visiting properties tied to decommissioned nodes. Mine was next on the list. So we waited. 3 days later, a white pickup truck rolled in. No logo. Just clean. Too clean. A man stepped out. Mid-40s. Sunglasses. Clipboard. He knocked. Asked if I'd received my utility easement adjustment notice. Said he needed to inspect root overgrowth near federal lines. I nodded. Told him to wait. Then I called Sloan. The agent didn't flinch when the man walked to the backyard without permission. Didn't flinch when he bent over the soil, pretending to measure. But when he reached into his coat and pulled out a small cylindrical drill, everything changed. 4 agents swarmed. The man didn't resist, but he smiled. They cuffed him, searched the truck. Inside they found a transmitter, soil disruptors, a thumb drive labeled with 3 letters I'd only seen once before, RGI. Rose Garden Initiative. It wasn't over. They weren't just targeting trees. They were searching for the original vault. The one my father hinted at in his final journal entry. The one no one had yet found. That night, I returned to the stump one more time. The rain had started again. Soft, unassuming, but steady. I dug. Not deep. Just enough to feel the earth give back a little. And then I touched something cold. Metal. Another case. No lock. Just rust. Inside, a cassette tape, wrapped in plastic, labeled in my father's handwriting. If they come for the roots. I didn't own a cassette player. But Ms. Green did. We played it together, huddled in her living room, the tape warbling with age. My father's voice crackled through. If you're hearing this, then the tree has fallen. And the war I feared is here. He spoke of systems buried beneath neighborhoods, signals waiting to be reactivated, and a failsafe coded into each node's capsule. It wasn't just passive defense. It was designed to awaken, to call attention, to mobilize anyone still listening. I sat back silent. It hit me finally. This wasn't just a fight over a tree. It was a legacy of resistance, a chain of protection passed from one generation to the next. And now I held the link. We weren't victims. We were the alarm. And the world was finally starting to hear it. I kept the tape safe, digitized it, backed it up, sent copies to people my father once mentioned, old contacts, veterans, a botanist from Oregon, even a retired seismic engineer from Colorado who replied within hours. His message was brief. You've got the last node. They'll come harder now. 3 days later, the power went out. Not just my house, the whole block. No warning. No weather event. Just darkness. Neighbors stepped outside with flashlights. The calm was deceptive, but their faces showed it. This was no accident. I lit candles. Checked the breaker. Nothing tripped. Then I saw it, a red light blinking under my truck. Small. Almost invisible. A tracker. They weren't just watching anymore. They were closing in. I grabbed the digitized copies, the original capsule remains, and the new sapling soil sample. Headed to Ms. Green's, her home still had an old generator from the storm era. She met me with firm eyes and a loaded .38. They're back, aren't they? Yeah. We bolted the door. Minutes later, movement outside. No lights, just silhouettes. She handed me a walkie from her late husband's supply. I switched it on. Static. Then chatter. Not police codes. Private. Tactical. Sweeping sectors. Ms. Green looked at me. Her voice steady. You remember where he buried the second route map? No. She handed me her husband's Bible. Inside, beneath Psalm 52, the righteous shall flourish like the green tree, was a folded paper, hand-drawn, a layout of the block, XS in 6 yards, one in mine, one under what used to be Karen's porch. It wasn't just my tree. 6 notes, each buried near a veteran's home, each a part of something larger, a network. I radioed Sloan. No answer. Static again. Jim. We needed to move. Outside, the shapes circled closer. Then lights. Headlights. 4 black SUVs, no markings, but we knew what they were. I reached for the back door. But Ms. Green stood up. Not yet. She opened a chest, pulled out a flare gun, and launched it into the sky. The silence shattered. Down the road, floodlights burst to life. Neighbors lit them like beacons. People we thought had stayed quiet, stayed out of it, now stood armed with lights, noise, and phones, recording everything. And then a van pulled up fast. Federal. Sloan jumped out, shouting, "Stand down." They're exposed. The black SUVs hesitated. More lights turned on. Sirens from down the hill. Too many eyes now. The shadows pulled back, disappeared as fast as they came. Later that night, Sloan confirmed it. The last active cell of the Rose Garden Initiative had been flushed. Karen and Denise had turned state's evidence. Every tree removed had data. Each home raided had been flagged years ago. Mine just happened to be the one that refused to fall quietly. They wanted silence, but we gave them noise. Loud, messy, undeniable truth. Months passed. The HOA was rebuilt from the ground up. No secret votes. No silent removals. Just neighbors, real neighbors, working together. The sapling grew, fast, almost defiantly. One day, a little girl from next door left a note under it. "Thank you for protecting our tree. I'll take care of it next." Legacy passed down in pencil and hope. I still visit the stump sometimes. Still hear my father's voice when the wind passes through the leaves. We were never just defending a tree. We were protecting memory. So if you're watching this and something in your neighborhood feels wrong, don't wait. Look deeper. Because sometimes the roots run further than you think. And sometimes the smallest tree holds the loudest truth. Like, share, and subscribe if you believe legacy should never be silenced.